Welcome to Black Night Scary. Tonight's video features truly terrifying bowling stories. It's supposed to be a fun time when you go bowling with family or friends. Usually you're there later into the evening, until someone creeps up on you, someone you've never met or seen before. Sit back, relax, and enjoy these terrifyingly true stories. Story number 1. The bowling alley was quiet. Lights dimmed to a soft glow. A faint hum of the machines mixed with the sound of bowling balls gliding down the slick lanes. Claire and Mark walked in, laughter spilling from their lips. It was late, but the allure of a late-night game was irresistible. They were a young couple, both in their 20s, full of life and dreams. Claire had a contagious smile, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Mark was tall with an easygoing charm that made it hard for anyone to resist him. Together they were playful, teasing each other as they picked out their bowling shoes. "Last one to score a strike buys the drinks," Mark challenged. A grin plastered on his face. Claire rolled her eyes but accepted the bet, a competitive fire igniting within her. As they settled into their lane, a soft thud echoed behind them. Claire glanced over her shoulder. A man stood there, his face partially obscured by the hood of his sweatshirt. He was tall and broad-shouldered, lingering too long for comfort. Claire felt a shiver run down her spine, but shrugged it off. They began to play, the sound of the ball crashing into pins drowned out by laughter. Every time Claire bowled, she felt the man's gaze. It was unsettling. "Hey, you okay?" Mark asked, noticing her discomfort as he prepared for his turn. "Yeah, just that guy," she replied, nodding subtly towards the man. Mark turned, but the man had already moved further down the alley, his back now to them. "Probably just a weirdo," Mark said, trying to ease her nerves. "Let's focus on the game." But Claire couldn't shake the feeling. With every roll of the ball, she glanced back at the man. He seemed to be watching, even from a distance. The alley was nearly empty now, the remaining bowlers having left. Just them and the man. They finished their game, Mark winning with a last-minute strike. Claire feigned annoyance but was relieved to be done. "Let's get out of here," she suggested, her voice slightly shaky. As they walked toward the exit, the man stepped into view again. He was closer now, his eyes locked on them. Claire felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Mark noticed too, his brow furrowing. "Stay close," he murmured, slipping an arm around her. They walked faster, the man's presence looming behind them. Outside, the cold night air hit them, but it was a relief from the stifling atmosphere inside. They hurried to Mark's car, glancing back. The man had followed them outside. He stood by the entrance, watching, unmoving. "Get in," Mark urged, urgency creeping into his voice. They climbed into the car, the sound of doors locking felt like a small comfort. Mark started the engine, the headlights illuminating the night. They pulled out of the parking lot, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She turned back and there he was, standing in the same spot, watching them drive away. "Did you see that?" Claire gasped. Mark nodded, his knuckles tight on the steering wheel. "Let's just get home," he said, his voice steady, but Claire could hear the undercurrent of fear. They took the back roads, the trees casting long shadows in the headlights. Claire tried to calm herself, but her heart raced. The image of the man loomed large in her mind. Mark's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "It's my sister. She says there's been a report of a guy stalking couples at bowling alleys." "What?" Claire's voice was a whisper now. "What do you mean?" "Just that," she said. "He's been following people home. They think he's a serial killer or something." The words hung in the air. Claire felt ice run through her veins. The laughter, the playful competition, they felt like a distant memory now. "Maybe we should call the police," she suggested, her voice trembling. "Let's go home first. We'll be safe there," Mark said, trying to reassure her. but the tightness in his voice betrayed him. They drove in silence, the tension thick. Claire kept glancing back, halfway expecting to see the man behind them, lurking in the shadows, but there was nothing, only darkness. Finally, they reached Mark's apartment. Claire hurried inside, feeling the weight of the door behind her as she locked it. "Do you think he followed us?" Claire asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. We'll be fine," Mark said, though his eyes were wide. They sat on the couch, the silence heavy. Claire wanted to turn on the TV to drown out the fear, but she couldn't move. Then a sound broke the quiet. A soft knock at the door. Claire's heart raced. "Did you hear that?" Mark nodded, his expression tense. Another knock. It was more insistent this time. "Who is it?" Mark called, although they both knew it was late. No one should be there. Silence hung heavy in the air. Then a voice. "Let me in." It was a low, raspy, chilling. Claire's blood ran cold. She grabbed Mark's hand, squeezing it tightly. "Who is it?" Mark asked once more, but the voice only repeated its demand. A third knock echoed, louder, more violent. Then it stopped. They held their breath, waiting, but the darkness outside seemed to breathe with them, waiting, watching. And somewhere in that suffocating silence, evil lurked. Story number 2. It was nearly sunset on a Saturday, and my friends were trying to convince me to break into the local bowling alley. Since middle school, we had gone there every day, and I had plans to work there after I graduated. Something about the place was calming, relaxing, and fun. I'm not worried about it being scary, I told myself. I'm worried about getting banned from the place. I knew that if we were caught, my dreams of working at the bowling alley were less than dead. I told myself, I'm not going. Several hours later, we were standing outside the bowling alley, armed with flashlights. Somehow, my friends convinced me to go with them. We had told our mothers that we were spending the night at each other's houses, so as long as they didn't call to check up on us, we would be okay. We stood in line, James on the left of me, Gordon on the right. After assuring me one more time we wouldn't get caught, we went inside, flashlights at the ready. The bowling alley was different at night. It was pretty dark and our flashlights didn't illuminate hardly anything. We didn't try to turn on the lights in fear someone might see us. There wasn't any food in the concession stand. They had probably put it all away for the night. We didn't want to set off alarms by stealing the food, so we walked over to the lanes. I've always wondered what was behind the lanes, where the pins went when you knocked them down. Now would be a perfect chance to see. We walked back behind the lanes, expecting to see tons of machines. What we found, however, was a long hallway. You couldn't see the pins. There was a door in the middle of the hallway that said pin storage. After convincing my friends to follow me, we walked into the pin room. There wasn't much to see. Racks full of bowling pins, shelves of old broken ones. There was another door that said pin supplies. "Let's get out of here," James said, breaking the silence. "What? Why?" I asked. "Come on, what are you going to see back there? Besides, I don't like the feel of this place." "Don't be scared." "I'm not." "Then come on." "No way, you go if you're so brave," my friend said. And so alone, I opened the door into the pin supplies room. The smell hit me almost instantly. It smelled like rotten flesh and paint. I clicked on my flashlight and nearly screamed. Bodies everywhere. Some missing limbs, some rotted to the point where they were almost unrecognizable, some fresh. They were lined up against a wall. I reached for a light switch, but found only a handle. I pulled it. A loud grating noise made my ears hurt. I watched in horror as skeletons hung from the ceiling, starting to move towards a grinder. They came out the other side as a pile of pin-shaped objects that were painted by another machine. I turned around, trying to run, but the door had closed behind me. I banged on it, screaming, I couldn't hear myself think over the noise. The machine cut off. Now that noise had stopped. I tried to open the door. I heard screams from the outside door, and I knew I was trapped. I sat down on the floor crying. It opened and a large man stared down at me. It was Becco Irwin, the owner of the bowling alley. I reached for his hand and he lifted me up, holding my head in his strong hands. Everything went black. I'd always wanted to work at the bowling alley. I got my wish. If you're ever feeling bored on a Saturday night, come exploring. Come on, how scary could a bowling alley be? Story number 3. When I was 20, I went out with my sister and cousin, basically like my sister, who both turned 18 in the summer. The drinking age in the UK is 18, so I was very excited that my 2 youngest friends could finally go to the bar and drink with me while I was on leave from university. We went to a famous bowling alley that is famous for late night bowling and their cocktails, and for once it was fairly empty. We were pretty drunk after a few hours, but nothing out of control, more being silly around each other, singing along to the music in the venue and attempting ridiculous bowling moves. As I'm quite protective of my younger sister, I didn't want to let loose around them, and I made sure they were able to handle their drinks each round. The place was growing increasingly empty. It was a Monday night, with the exception of 2 or 3 other bowling parties. The bartender got us free food to help pace up the alcohol. We even had a friendly competition with the other lanes, and laughed every time one of us messed up or cheered when there was a strike. Just after the midnight mark, I noticed a guy in his early 20s come up to our table. At this point, my sisters were around the drinks table, near our bowling lane, and I was actively throwing the ball. I realized I hadn't seen this guy at all yet. It was strange because the other few parties were interacting with us, as they were in groups of friends, so I knew this guy hadn't been with any of the other parties throughout the night. I walked back to the table while my sisters didn't seem to notice this man. I noticed he was stood against the back wall, a few feet away from us, watching us intently. Immediately, my gut told me something was wrong, because we had the bowling lane at the end of the venue, and the tables around the area had only been occupied by us that night. At first, I thought this guy was trying to steal our phones or our purses. However, this man would not move, so we just kept talking, laughing as we didn't want to let him know we thought anything of his presence, but also trying to stay alert. I saw him checking my cousin out. He was staring at her while licking his lips, and he takes out his phone and suddenly takes a photo of us. The man doesn't ask to take a picture with us. He just takes one of us. I couldn't be certain if he took a photo or not, so I told my cousin to pretend to go to the bathroom towards the front at reception, but actually alert someone behind the bar or security that we felt uncomfortable. As soon as my cousin leaves, the guy approaches my sister and I, asking what our plans are for the rest of the night. I literally rolled my eyes. I just assumed he was a guy trying to flirt with us and score one of us. I took charge of answering and was just blunt with my answers. We're sisters, yes. From the corner of my eye, I see my cousin return with the security guard. The security guard asks the guy to come with him, takes him away from us. At this point, I think it's all over, and the guy will be removed from the venue. But not 30 seconds later, the security guard returns with the man. The security guard says to me, "Do you know this man?" And the guy straight up says, "Of course she does. I'm her boyfriend." At this point, I was in internal panic mode, and I told the security guard, "No, he's not my boyfriend. He's making us feel uncomfortable." My sisters even chimed in, telling the guard that we literally have never seen this man before in our lives. This is when the man then says, "Baby, don't be like that. It was just a silly argument." Tries to hold my hand. I was flat out creeped at this point, and the bouncer could tell he was lying by our reaction, so we escorted the guy outside. As we walked out and turned the corner from the bowling alley, we saw the guy stood around talking to multiple men while showing them his cell phone. We were still a long distance away from our car, and the men started following us. We had to walk 2 to 3 city blocks to get to the parking garage where we parked our car. We were about to turn down the street to walk into the parking garage when we hear running footsteps behind us. Our hearts started pounding. My sisters look right behind us, and there's 4 men chasing us, sprinting for us. We nearly reach our car before one of my sisters gets taken by the biggest man. My sister started kicking and screaming, scratching the man, trying to get away. Me and my other sister were punching and kicking and trying to protect her, but they got our youngest sister. One of the men knocked her out and threw her over his shoulder. A van swiftly pulled up to the side of the street, and all 4 men and our sister got into the van and sped off. I dialed 911, faster, screaming, frantic. It's now been 6 years since that night happened, and we've never seen our sister again. Thank you guys for watching and listening to the very end of this video. If you would like your true scary story featured on an upcoming video, email your story to the email in the description box below. Until we meet again, stay safe out there.